welcome to our ethical channel. Today I'm delighted to introduce you one of my favorite people, Olga Orozco. She is Chief Technical Advisor at the International Labour Organization, the ILO, and while she's not only a wonderful human being, she's a rigorous professional from which I have the opportunity to learn many of the things I'm able to do today. I'm sure that you will be delighted with this presentation, so please follow me. Thank you very much, Olga, for accepting this interview. You know that I admire you a lot as a person and as a professional. And yeah, I think you were the right person to discuss something that is quite mixed up. The title of the interview or the title of the topic is Crisis Management, Power, Influence, and Charisma. So it is a lot of many things that hopefully through the conversation we get the links that these different elements have. So maybe as the first question, because I always like to start with the definitions and things. So would you mind to, do you have a definition in mind about what is power and influence mean, particularly for sustainability leaders?
Okay. Vero, thank you very much for the invitation. It's a pleasure for me to talk to you and for this opportunity to discuss these topics that I find really interesting and timely with the situation that we're living nowadays. So let's say that power for me normally is given by your title or your position or maybe your relationships. And that is fine, but I think influence is better because influence is something that may come with power, of course, but it's also something that you can exert from your own experiences and from your own knowledge. So let's focus this on the field of sustainability. It is a reality that in the field of sustainability, the professionals in the sector rarely are given so much power. This is a reality. It's fairly recent that in sustainability is not so often or not always that the sustainability professionals are invited to the board of directors meetings or that are really consulted in critical decisions for the companies, unfortunately. So this is why, since we don't have that much power, we really need to try to exercise influence in our spheres to achieve our goals. And I think that is possible because if we think about it, the information that we manage as sustainability specialists is actually critical for risk management. So if we speak about environmental risk or about social risk or reputational risk, these are components that are intrinsically linked to the success of the companies and should not be ignored. So if we are able to learn about risks and protect our companies, this should be our path to influence, and we should use that.
No, excellent. Absolutely. Very good distinction between power and influence that very often is mixed up. And as you properly said, it is a completely different thing. But then how do we incorporate the personal charisma into that equation?
Well, I am a big advocate of exercising our power to build relationships. Mm-hmm. I tell you, in my career, the most interesting moves that I have made, the positions that I have achieved that I am proud of and that I most enjoy, they always came through one of these situations. Me looking to speak to a person after a conference, looking for that small space to say, hi, my name is, and I'm interested in that kind of situation, and also building relationships inside the companies or inside the institutions. And I don't mean necessarily that you every week go and ask the CEO for lunch. That should be possible and you should do it. But building relationships at all levels. having friends in all departments, or not necessarily friends, but at least that they know who you are, and that they know what you do, and that you show genuinely interest on what they do, and what they care about. And I think that this creates really the sense of you being part of a team, and also opens up those spaces for you to intervene and to, coming back to the last question, to exercise that influence. And that is very important.
Absolutely. And also avoid silos, right? Many companies are suffering of these silos, and what you are suggesting is get interactive with the team, be a team. Although
Absolutely.
in these circumstances with the lockdowns, it's getting a challenge, but absolutely good advice.
Yeah, but let me just say one thing. My team, the one that I manage right now, is a dispersed team. I have people in Costa Rica, in Chile, in Peru. And before the lockdown, of course, I spoke to them once a week or twice a week. But now that we are all away, that I don't have somebody next door in my office, the relationships have taken like a more horizontal character. And I speak the same to everybody, and I try to speak everybody to everybody every day. So I think it's a matter of adjusting your ways and accepting that this is what we have now, and try to make the best out of it.
The best out of it. Very good. And also very hopeful for those that are feeling alone. Yeah. And also, well, this relationship that you, this network that you're suggesting to create internally, I think it's crucial in terms of handling a crisis, right? Because in a business crisis, the effects of that can be operational, can be, as you mentioned it before, damage to the reputation, and in all that, the team should be able to work together. But how do you see the role of the sustainability leaders if you want, well, before the crisis, maybe linked with what you said about the type of information we handle, during the crisis and after the crisis?
Okay, so let's start by saying that, of course, the primary role of the sustainability leader should be to prevent a crisis. So let's remember that all companies, but in particular multinational companies, should exercise due diligence. And that is our job as experts, to try to prevent and to try to mitigate any potential or actual risk that we are generating on human rights, or in social and labor rights, or in social issues, or environmental, of course. So let's also remember that this process is not something that we should do alone. And I don't mean necessarily alone in our company, but more, and I'm gonna wear my ILO hat now, and that is that these kind of processes need substantial consultation, and that consultation process should take into account issues like freedom of association and collective bargaining. It is very important to do not forget industrial relations and social dialogue as a continuous process. So it's not something that you do once, it's something that you continuously do. And of course, to make tangible these processes, what we use normally is codes of conduct and certifications, and we translate with those tools, we translate our needs and our actions for due diligence. But of course, those processes are imperfect, and sometimes things go wrong. And then when something goes wrong, of course, your first reaction should be to control the damage. And I do not mean only from the side of your company. Of course, you need to go and provide first aid to those that are being affected. And I think that here we all remember what happened when Rana Plaza unfortunately collapsed, and what were our reactions, and that at the end, the first action that we had to take was to go there and see how can we help. those who were affected and the families that lost their loved ones. So that, of course, is very important. But of course, it's also really important to think about the damage that is being done to our company and to manage communications. And here I want to insist in transparency and honesty, because I think that that can make the big difference on how the public interprets the crisis and how they interpret the response the company gives to that crisis. So of course, for that, there are also people who are specialized on this, but I think that the sustainability specialists should be at the center of that process. And finally, I would like to mention remediation. Mm-hmm. I know that this is a hard sell. It's something that normally companies at the higher levels are not so willing to engage with. But I think that to really control the reputational damage and to prevent this from happening again, this is a key step. Let's not forget that society has the expectation nowadays that companies really need to address these impacts, and that they need to take responsibility for any damage that they have caused or contributed to, not only if they have caused them directly, but also contributing by cooperating and by remediating the damage.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the problem now, and I'm sorry that I'm keeping you confronted to problems, but it's also what we hear from the CSR professionals we are in contact with, is, as you say, there is a great expectation from society and even from companies to their CSR or the sustainability leaders to solve many issues. And at the same time, the feedback we get is that in many cases, the budget has been reduced dramatically. And so I wanted your piece of advice for sustainability leaders on how to navigate this situation that in many cases they are facing.
Well, first thing is to say that if you cut the funds now for sustainability, it's like if you have a fire and you cut the fund for the fire department, or in the middle of the pandemic, you cut the funds for the health organization. But I understand that this is reality and that our colleagues out there are dealing with that precisely. So let's just reflect for a second what happened last year. And I will bring my personal experience here. I went from having maybe 20 business trips in the year to 0. I planned last year to have 5 trainings for our constituents, and we made 25 trainings for our constituents. And at the same time, although the investment from the personal side was really big and difficult, I also have to say that we saved money. What I'm trying to say here is that we have to look at the way we were doing things. And instead of waiting for the conditions to be ideal again and to be the way we were before, to try to do things differently. So it is human to find difficult to change something, to do things in a different manner. Yeah. And understand that, and I suffer from the same. You try to stick to your ways, but this is a very special time in our lives, and I think that we need to adapt. And here I'm going to be very specific about something, and that is, I understand that among the sustainability professionals and among some companies and schemes, things like remote audits have not been so well received. Been a little bit reluctant to engage with this, but I think that this is a mistake. It's a lost opportunity. I understand that it's not perfect. I understand that it gives an edge. It gives some gaps that is maybe difficult to cover, but it's the best that we have now. So I will encourage our colleagues out there to reconsider this and to try to see the opportunities, to try to see that for many revisits, maybe a video call should be enough, that we can save CO2 emissions, that we can save money, that we can save time, and still have a sense of what is happening at the facilities. And even if this is not possible for all issues or in all regions, it should be possible for most issues in most regions. So my call here is for people to be creative and to be open-minded. I know it's, again, not ideal, but try to think out of the box and be open-minded about this.
Okay, so there is no excuse. Well, of course, it's not the ideal situation, as you say, but it's no excuse to say, well, I don't know anymore what is happening in the factories because I'm no longer traveling, so I cannot do anything about it. We still need to find solutions.
Absolutely.
And this is also a part of the message we give about leadership, is that the leader is a person that is capable to not only lead towards something, but is also capable to be looking at what was done before, get the learnings and apply them. And in that context, actually, I have, it's almost a philosophical question, so bear with mine. But I'm thinking, okay, right now, sustainability leaders are sort of leading the way, and they are giving responses to issues that we identified like 10 years ago, right? Or even, I would say 20, but okay.
20.
Otherwise we look too old, so let's keep 10. We identified those 20 years ago, and we are sort of acting now. But couldn't be that as previous generations, we are now acting on that without realizing the impact our actions and decisions today may have to the future generation. And therefore the question will be, are there any hotspots, any indication out there that could tell us, hey, do not forget about this? Because maybe you are very busy with climate change, which obviously is important, but you are missing out another good element for the future.
Yeah, I think it's a very good question, because we have already our minds structured for certain set of problems. And I think that we need to open up to other possibilities and other circumstances that are going to arise in the future. So I think it's a very timely question. So let me make a little bit of a recount of what we see, particularly from the ILO. We have been studying the labor markets and the situations that we are dealing with in the labor schemes throughout the world. And there is one big problem that we see that is not new, but I want to mention it, and that is the high levels of informality in many countries. So what we see is that, and I'm going to give an example of one country, not because it's the only one, but because it's the one that I know the best, and that is Peru. In Peru, 3 out of 4 workers are informal. And that means that these people were not covered with health insurance, any kind of social protection, any kind of a structure that protects them from a situation like the one we have now. And that is not going to change, it's actually increasing. And how that relates to companies, and I know that most people that are listening to us are saying, well, but we only work with formal companies. Yes, you do, but those formal companies have informal relationships in many cases with subcontractors. And please be very careful with that part of the equation.
Excellent.
Then 2 other issues that I think are going to be in the rise, and it's not me, it's ILO again, who is spitting up numbers that are really concerning. One thing has to do with forced labor. We have seen last year that the forced labor numbers are going up. With the migration and the increase in poverty, it is bound to happen that we will have more cases of forced labor in many regions, not only Latin America, but also in Asia. And one more element is child labor. In the last decade, child labor was declining. We were, to give an example with Colombia, for example, in the last decade, we decreased I think 1.5% the incidence of child labor. But now we see that that is going up and it will continue to go up. Families that fall back into poverty, families where a parent or both parents suddenly die because of the pandemic, this is going to push children again into the child labor market. And remember that schools are closed. So in rural areas where schools have been closed for more than a year, those kids are back to holding a machete and working in the fields. And this is a reality. I have seen it with my own eyes, and it's really, really sad. So please be mindful of that. But I want to highlight something that for me is particularly important, and I wish that the sustainability experts that we are talking here today, they keep it in mind. And this has to do with the increasing inequality that is brewing for women and for those who are in charge of caring for others. I don't think that I need to explain this too much because many of you have witnessed this or experienced it in firsthand, and that is that with the schools closed and with the new rules for working, many women and many people are having to stay home and care for others and withdrew from the labor market. But I don't want to stop there. I would like, if you allow me the time, to give some ideas for companies and in general to try to contain that kind of damage because it's possible. So the first idea that I would like to throw out there is to help families deal with the imbalance that we have with the unpaid care work. And you must be thinking, well, these are roles that traditionally people have played, or women particularly have played this role of caregivers, and what can a company do about this? And there are many things that company can do. And I'm gonna mention a couple. For example, to promote the role of men as also caregivers and also to promote the role that men should have as co-responsible at home when caring for children. I remember this campaign from a supermarket in Peru, I think, where they have something like, it is cool to be an involved dad. It doesn't cost too much, but it can help change the perception of men about going and buying groceries or going to a parents teachers conference or staying at home and caring for a sick child. Mm-hmm. We need to do these kind of things to change the role, to change the role models that companies use for commercial campaigns, for example. Is something that is possible. It is not far-fetched and really can make a difference. Another item that for me is super important, and I don't think is really in the radar of most companies, is the same way that we ask governments to have roads or to provide public transportation so we can go to work, the same way that we ask a company, you need to provide a parking space so I can go to work. The same way we need to ask for infrastructure for childcare. The fact that companies and governments in general do not offer sufficient or do not offer childcare facilities, that means that many women do not have the opportunity to access the labor market. It's infrastructure for work. It's not something like a luxury. It's something basic. We need this. And finally, let me talk about breaking the glass ceiling. And I'm going to use some numbers here, and I apologize that I'm going to talk about numbers in Latin America, but I think it's a good example. I'm sure that this is repeated somewhere else in the globe. So we know that right now in Latin America, more women graduate from university than men. So we know that women are more educated than men in Latin America, in all countries where we have data. When the ILO interviewed 1,200 something companies last year, and we asked, do you have women in management? companies told us, yes, 1/3 of our managers are women. So we already go from being 50% more educated to only 1/3 in management. Okay. And then when we ask them, how many companies have CEOs that were women? Only 4% say we have a women CEO. From being most educated than men to being only 4% of the CEOs, that is a big gap and we need to close that. So sorry that I took a extended, I feel very strongly about it, and I think it's an opportunity to knock on the door of people in companies and remind them that this is very important, that affects a big chunk of the population and that we need to do something about it.
Absolutely. And I'm very glad that you mentioned it, because that's particularly the case in sustainability, isn't it? Where the majority of the people working in sustainability are women, but then all of a sudden the director is going to be a man. And as you said, something seems like, and I'm not saying that the men are also very qualified to be directors.
Absolutely.
But something sounds like unbalanced there. And
absolutely.
We need to do something about it. Would bring me to, oh my goodness, we need more talks of this, right? But I'm very aware of how busy you are, so I don't want to take much more of your time. But maybe as the last question, I like to ask like the three pearls of wisdom from you towards young professionals. So in this case will be, what do you think, how could they get better in crisis management, power and influence?
Okay, I mentioned already a few things like building up relationships and being being ready to speak up in many circumstances. But I'm gonna just say something very short about the need for professionals when they are young and when they are in a field like sustainability, they need to be bold. And what I mean is the following. And I speak particularly to women because I see this problem more frequent in women than in men. When I interview people for jobs, or when I see women interact in meetings, very often I see them doubting their own capabilities, diminishing their accomplishments and thinking that they arrive where they are because of some sort of combination of luck and serendipity. It just happened. No, if you are where you are, in the position where you are, is because you have a lot of knowledge, you have experience, and you have a lot of value, and you need to recognize that. So when you recognize that, you are ready to apply for a higher position where you have more power, you see, full circle, and you will be more able and capable to exercise that influence that you can have in order to change your surroundings, to change your company, to change your own career. So please be bold. Please don't doubt that you have what is needed. Those people that speak a lot in meetings, they're just exercising confidence. They don't know more than you do. Maybe in areas you have different experiences, but please be bold and be confident on what you know, and that will make a difference. I can assure you that. I have seen a lot cases, for example, where there is a position open for and applications are open, and I see female colleagues saying, oh, but they ask 10 things and I have only 8. I cannot apply for that. I am missing 2 things. And then men come and say, oh, 10 things. I have 6. I'm good. I think I got it. So I don't want to pick on men, but I really want to say to everybody, be confident, and reach out and reach up because you have the capability and you can change things. That will be my message.
So wonderful. And I totally agree with you. That's what happened most of the time. We need to have everything under control in order to feel secure to apply it. And yeah, we need to change that perception. Absolutely. Wow. So what can I say? I'm so delighted. It was amazing talking to you, Olga. I think you gave such a great advice and it shows all the experience that you have. And I'm sure that people will appreciate also the lens from Latin America. So no, not at all a problem. Actually, the opposite. Thank you so much. And
My pleasure.
well, we keep in touch.
Well, thank you very much, Vero, for the opportunity. I hope this is useful for somebody. And if they need to reach me also, I am available. Take care. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.